keep on telling me to pray, cause I'm spinning like a carousel, circling the train. Hit the bottom of the bottle, I don't wanna feel the pain, but that is all I got for now. I don't wanna talk about the voices in my head, keep on begging me to stay. If I pull the trigger now, then the demons go away. And I know my time is coming, so there ain't no time to waste. So that is all I got for now. I don't wanna talk about the voices in my head, keep telling me to choose a side. It's heaven or hell, like it's do or die. I'm a sad boy, you know better. Please don't make this last forever. The voices in my head keep telling me I'm not okay. It's feeling like a hurricane in my brain. Dark clouds, hard times, bad weather. Please don't make this last forever.
Yeah, Falling in Reverse. Nice. Good choice. I'm Luis Romero. I'm the Fuck Fentanyl guy, and this is the Fuck Fentanyl podcast. Today I got my really special guest right here. She's one of my favorite people to talk to ever. And she's definitely lived quite a life. And I'm really excited to have her. Charlie, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, fresh off the LFG podcast.
Yep.
You had fun doing it?
I did, actually. Not like, I don't know. I didn't know how the experience was going to go, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I think I told you that somebody had reached out to me that I had contact with about 10 years ago. She had been writing me when she was like 14. She was going through some really hard stuff. And we had lost contact. And she reconnected with me because of that podcast.
That's really rad.
Yeah. And she just said that, that I had made such a positive impact on her life 10 years ago. And I was just floored, but just the fact that that podcast was able to help us reconnect and find each other again, and that I was able to hear everything that she's doing now and that she's doing so many positive things. It was just, it was amazing.
That's really awesome. What an amazing little thing and that happens. Just simply voicing your story, you know what I mean? I also want to get to your book because I know you're an author.
Yes, I am.
What's your book about, real quick?
So the book is called Broken. It's actually the first in a series. We'll see if I ever make enough money to get the second one published.
But hey, buy it, people. What's it about?
It is about, it's kind of dystopian sci-fi fantasy. And it is about a girl who, in this world, it's ruled over by this kind of seemingly omnipotent, I guess you call it, like just series of people called the Malvia. And the normal everyday citizen of the empire, which rules over the entire world. They don't really, they believe in them, but they don't. They kind of treat them like gods almost. Sure. They blame them for all the bad shit that doesn't have an explanation, and they credit them for all the good, But like the everyday, day-to-day governing happens from like the governors, the mayors, the counselors. But the Malvia is above them all. But nobody knows what they look like. Nobody's seen them. The quote unquote realistic thinking people think that they died, like 1,000 years ago and things like that. But they're still the figureheads of the empire. And when you first go to prison, which the main character does, of course, the very first thing that they tell you when you get incarcerated is that your life no longer belongs to you. You are the property of the empire and of the Malvia.
I see.
And that was kind of born out of the whole truth that, like, when you go to prison, you're the property of the state.
Right.
You can get a write-up for getting a sunburn for destruction of state property.
Right. Yeah.
But so she gets taken out of prison and she becomes a worker directly for the Malvia. And so she's exposed to this whole other very real side of them that nobody else in the empire knows about.
Yeah.
And the Malvia kind of use all of these people that are, they call them Yavahathan, and literally translate to broken. So they use all of these people that have gone to jail, gone to prison, that have just lived these like really fucked up lives.
Yeah.
And they have kind of nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn. They're at the bottom,
Yeah.
and they use them to become their workers.
I see.
And they utilize them in different ways as a giant underground psychological mindfuck to the rest of the empire.
Okay.
That nobody else knows about. And so she becomes one of these people, and very quickly she decides that it's very wrong. She doesn't want to do it. And so it's her learning how to navigate this different world and trying to take down this power that she knows is wrong and that they don't have any right to do what they do.
Okay.
And
Try to usurp.
yeah, kind of like basically like a revolution of sorts, but
Right.
she's just one person. And but she's obviously, like I said, there's magic elements to it. There's plenty of sci-fi elements to it. She's actually half teched, so half of her body is mechanical.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
wow. That's
so
really rad.
She's a cyborg.
Fuck yes.
Yeah, she's fucking awesome. I love her.
Hell yes.
But it's also, while she's doing all of this, she's also learning how to kind of come back from her childhood, which is, she was in a street gang. She was somebody who went out and punished people for running out on debts to the leader.
Okay.
And she just lived a life being very cruel.
I see.
And having to hurt people and becoming very good at hurting people.
I see.
In order to keep herself safe. And she never had any problem with it. And her relationships were always, what we talk about being transactional. And so when she, joins this new kind of sect of people that are totally outside of the normal empire, and they operate as slaves to the Malvia, but internally amongst themselves, it's a law punishable by death that you cannot harm another one on purpose.
I see.
And so she starts developing friendships and genuine relationships with other people. Okay. And so it's her learning how to become a human being again, almost, and work through her trauma a lot.
I see.
And it just has a lot of like my own experiences.
Yeah, I was putting that together as you were saying your story.
I've had to learn and work through. So really it's kind of a very emotional truth of what it was like to go to prison and learn how to love and trust and be trusting and be loving in a place with people that society has just, given up on or claimed that they can't change.
Right.
Like for me, and I say this a lot, the most loving, trustworthy, compassionate person I know is in prison for a double murder. And she was the head of a street family. And when she got incarcerated, she was truly a fearsome, cruel, horrible person.
Yeah.
And she'll admit that, no, hands down, she knows that. And yet today, who she is today, I've never met anybody who has the capacity for compassion and empathy the way that she does.
I see. So she became a totally different person.
And so there's a lot of that in the books as well.
I see.
As like showing that people can change what they really work through. Definitely the very emotional aspect of becoming a different person.
I see. Yeah, wow. So it just has like that little sci-fi like edge to it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's really fucking awesome. I fucking love, because you're a big you're big into fantasies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up needing an escape, so before and around drugs, it was always fantasy. Yeah. And I used to use it in a pretty destructive way, I guess I could say, because I lived in the fantasy versions of my life instead of living in reality. But today I'm able to utilize it as a means of being honest.
Okay.
I can talk about things that I've been through or things I've felt or that I've seen other people go through and feel And I can tell that honestly in that kind of forum. So it gives me really open medium to discuss all of those things that are really, really difficult. And like one of my favorite aspects of the book is it focuses a lot on class and crime.
I see.
And the realities underneath why people commit the crimes that they do. And nobody just wakes up one day and decides, oh, I'm going to go do this. Some people are literally conditioned since birth to believe that what they're doing is normal and acceptable.
Yeah.
Because they were taught that that is how you live your life by the people that were literally keeping them alive, like their parents.
Like the parents.
And so it talks a lot about that, and
I see.
how just the emotional aspect behind why people do what they do. And from the outside looking in, we see it and we say, oh, that's disgusting, that's horrible, it's unexplainable. But in reality, it's not. It's not excusable, but it's also not unexplainable.
Right.
Yeah,
I got you. All right. Well, before we start with your story, I just wanted to explain real quick how I met Charlie. You don't mind?
Nope, not at all.
All right. So it was like a year ago, actually. A guy just saw it on my Facebook memories. So that's a good way to keep track of things. But yeah, I met Charlie on one of my Fuck Fentanyl photo shoots. I didn't know at the time, but her and her friend Katie had just got out of prison. Both good considerable amount of time that would catch anybody's attention. And but when I saw them, they were really nice and they were really cool. And we took some photos at I think it was La Jolla.
La Jolla Beach.
La Jolla Beach. And it was a good old time. And after the photo shoot wrapped, I talked to both of them, and and they told me they both got out after doing a stretch. And and pretty much when I talked to Charlie, she pretty much kind of laid out, in a very open way, what happened to her. And it was just so shocking, jaw dropped shit, like what? And, because when I talked to her, she's very open and honest and very well spoken, and the way she can articulate stuff, even with somebody that wasn't even in the rooms, at the time, you had a lot of like aspects of recovery in your life from your experiences in prison, and and how you explain in your book, you're trying to better yourself, and I really, I'd really admired Charlie, and and I started seeing her a lot more often. She started going to, meetings and stuff, which is really rad. She had, been sober for a while, but I just think it's really cool though that she wants to go down like that same path as I have done, through 12 steps. And I really think that's really rad. And I just love talking to Charlie. She has just such a great insight in life, and and we're all in, and I get deep in wormholes and about shit. I mean, we were just talking about fucking Harry Potter and Pirates of the Caribbean and shit like that just earlier. But all right, Charlie, let's start it from the beginning now. Where were you from?
I was from El Dorado Hills, California.
Okay.
So it's up north near Folsom.
Oh, by the prison.
That's how everybody knows it.
Yeah, no one knows Folsom for anything else.
Nope.
There's old Folsom and new Folsom. So how was it growing up over there?
Well, I was born in San Jose, and then I moved to Rockland.
Okay.
When I was about 5, and then El Dorado Hills when I was 11. And it was good. The community is beautiful. It's great. It's kind of upper middle class.
Oh, okay.
So, gated communities.
Oh, okay.
Nice houses.
Nice.
Usually safe communities.
Usually safe. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Just a lot of just like normies.
Yeah, a lot of normies
Yeah.
and yeah. Like
You
like
know.
what do you call it? Like suburbia kind of
Yep.
ty-
Yep.
type
Definitely.
type of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and God, and you grew up with your mother.
Yep. Mom, no dad, never
Mhm.
met him, no siblings, just me and her.
Yeah, and God, I mean, so Charlie's story gets really deep here, but I'm just gonna try to minimize, as much as I can here. But so you and your mom didn't have a very great relationship, like a
Yeah, she's an alcoholic and an addict. Um, she abused her prescription medication. First it was pain meds. Well, actually no. First it was her psych meds and then pain meds. And she was also bipolar,
yeah,
a bipolar depressant, and she she I guess you could say she self medicated until I was about 11. With alcohol. And, anybody who's ever had mental health issues knows that self medicating with anything doesn't work.
yeah,
And it only makes things worse.
mhm,
And it definitely did. The, bulk of my early childhood, from like my first memories to about 11, she, was on that roller coaster of extreme explosive rages,
yeah,
super low lows, like crawling on the ground, crying, begging for forgiveness.
hmm
And then in between those two, she'd either be locked in her room,
hmm
um, getting drunk,
getting drunk, yeah,
or sleeping it off,
yeah,
and you know, or being, normal, her
yeah,
normal.
right,
Um, and when she was good and you know, she wasn't angry or she wasn't depressed and she wasn't drunk, she could be this really amazing person.
hmm
And she had a lot of amazing qualities. I was actually just talking about her with a, a friend before I came over here, talking about her cooking. And she's this amazing cook, and she
Mhm.
had a lot of really great morals, I guess you could say. But the the abusive side was also just as much of a part of our relationship, and it definitely became it was more than that. Honestly, it was cast a really large shadow over it. It was extremely toxic. Our relationship, I was in a codependent relationship with my mom since birth.
Yeah,
And really, I wasn't so much her daughter as much as her wife.
I see.
And she utilized me in that capacity because she wanted a partner.
Yeah,
And she wanted someone to love her unconditionally. And she wanted someone to be there for her and to support her emotionally. And I was expected to be that person. And I don't know whether or not she had that conscious expectation, but that's the role I ended up having to fill to make myself safe.
I see.
And so it was, that hypersensitivity to her emotional changes, whether she was up, if she was down, was she normal,
Yeah,
and then having to either match it or do the opposite of it to pull her up, or to be calm, to bring her back down. Always trying to level her out. And then you add into that the physical abuse, the emotional and psychological abuse, and then the sexual abuse. And
yeah.
because she molested me for about 6 years.
Jesus Christ, that's rough. And obviously, you're going through this trauma at a very young age, and we talked about, maybe you had used, like fantasies to escape. from this reality.
Mm-hmm.
When did drugs and alcohol became in the picture?
Well, my first, I guess you could call it my first use of escape that didn't have to do with like basically using fantasy was suicide and self-mutilation.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The first time I tried to commit suicide, I think it was about 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point on, self-mutilation became a really big part of how I dealt with a lot of the overwhelming emotions that I was dealing with on usually a pretty daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
When she and I would get into fights, it was almost always ended up in a panic attack.
Okay.
And to this day, I still have panic attacks, but they're not nearly as frequent, and they have pretty specific triggers.
Yeah.
But anytime I felt overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do, kind of felt like it was this feeling of coming out of my skin, extremely uncomfortable, extremely anxious, fighting back a scream that felt like it was coming from the bottom of my spine.
Yeah.
And just not wanting to be there anymore. And the only thing that made that go away was hurting myself.
Yeah.
And I used that for quite a number of years. I didn't start using drugs or alcohol until I was 13.
I see.
Up until I was 13, I didn't even know my mom was using or drinking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was 11, my mom and I started going to therapy together and separately, and all of a sudden, a lot of her behavior changed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was very disorienting and confusing,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds really weird, but it was also very scary because I didn't know who I was dealing with anymore.
Yeah. You don't know what to expect now.
Yeah, no, it's literally like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is how it's the closest metaphor I can use, because to me it felt like it was overnight. She was this totally different person, and our relationship no longer had any of the same dynamics that it did before.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to use that. Like, I was so used to living in this state of emotional survivalist thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I was never physically in danger of dying.
Yeah.
But the feeling of always having to be on my toes, always in that like perpetual state of fight, flight, or freeze, the continuous panic attacks, like they all honed in this very just constantly looking for the next threat, always preparing myself for, what's coming around the next bend. And so when everything started changing, I had no idea how to navigate that.
Yeah.
And it was very scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely uncomfortable because like when you walk into a situation, you keep expecting a threat.
Yeah.
You're used to them, just sitting there in the light, on the floor. It's very easy to see. You know where it is. You know how to get around it.
Yeah.
But when I turned 11, she started changing. It was more like all of the threats were hidden, and I had no idea where they were or when they were going to pop out.
Yeah. You're just like, get it over with already.
Yeah, exactly. And for a while, I actually pushed her into fighting, into getting into arguments, because that's how I knew how to have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
And I just figured if I just make you explode, like I know how to navigate that kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. I know how to deal with that. But after a couple of years, and even though at the time I didn't know the term for it was getting drunk, I knew what getting drunk was, but I didn't know that's why she was behaving the way that she was. Because as far back as I can remember, my mom used the term half asleep.
I see.
To explain her strange behavior that goes along with getting drunk and high, which is, I don't remember that, I must have been half asleep. Or, slurred speech, the not making any sense, saying things that sounded like they were like coherently, I could understand her words, but the things coming out of her mouth made absolutely no sense, talking about Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, like just
Like, what
really
the fuck?
weird stuff or
Yeah.
really strange behavior, like, you know, falling asleep in the backyard in her underwear.
Shit.
Yeah, or being
Oh,
passed out in front of the fridge.
Uh.
And like things like that. Like I was just like you know, didn't know what to make of it, but she said it was because she was half asleep. So that was my vocabulary for that behavior.
I see.
Until I was 13. And so, but those episodes started getting less and less. I think she finally started getting on medication for her bipolar.
I see.
And then she stopped drinking so much. So our relationship after, you know, 6 months, 8 months kind of started like leveling out. I started getting used to this new norm. I started learning.
Oh,
You know, she was setting healthy boundaries. We were communicating. I was actually getting better just being able to have a relationship with her.
I see.
And that's kind of how it was going until, you know, I was about 13 and then started like happening a little bit more often again.
I see.
I know.
So she regressed.
Yeah. Like my 13th and 14th birthday, both, she's drunk.
Yeah.
And I had friends over and things like that. But like I said, when I was 13, I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew it was extremely embarrassing.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Totally.
also like scary because I didn't know why she was behaving that way. And, you know, I had people over at the house. I had other, you know, girls that were over at the house, or I'd be riding in the car with someone. And she wasn't able to drive right. So it was just one of those things where, oh no, this is happening again.
Yeah.
And I never had friends when I was younger than that. So I had never experienced that feeling of, you know, I don't want people coming over to my house anymore because I don't know what's going to open the door.
Yeah.
And when I was 13, about 13 and a half, during the summer between middle school and high school, I was vacuuming in her room, and I put I started vacuuming to try to get as far underneath her bed as I could, and I heard the clinking of glass underneath it, and I lifted up the bed skirt, and I saw, you know, a bunch of bottles under there, like 6 or 7.
Oh, wow.
Something like
That's
that,
quite a
like
bit.
empty wine bottles.
Yeah.
And it just clicked. I'm not sure why it never clicked before that, and I think that's just because I had never, like, the two things had never been the same.
It just seems like she's like purposely hiding it. And it's obvious now that you see the evidence. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, because I'd never seen, like, you know, masses of empty wine or liquor bottles before.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it clicked at that moment.
Yeah.
And I just had this moment of thinking about every moment that I could remember of that weird behavior, of that being quote unquote half asleep, of the embarrassment and the fear. And every time I had to, you know, deal with her when it came to my family, or deal with her when it came to the neighbors, or deal with her when it came to her friends, and then my friends when I finally got friends, and then just her behavior with me, and how many times she told me she didn't remember doing things to me because she was half asleep. And then that moment of realizing she wasn't half asleep, she was drunk. And every time that I told myself, you know, she can't help it, it's not her fault, she's half asleep. You know, she could help it. It is her fault. She wasn't half asleep, she was drunk.
Yeah.
And she knew that she did things to me because I told her or I asked her about them.
Yeah.
She knew she hurt me.
Yeah.
When she was drunk
Yeah.
and never stopped her.
Mm-hmm.
And that just feeling of betrayal and just this, it was a lie that I had been telling myself for so long that I didn't realize was a lie.
Yeah.
And it was the one thing that I clung on to so hard to give a reason.
Yeah.
To try to excuse some of it. And even though I was still angry and I was still resentful, I didn't hate her because I kept telling myself it's not her fault. She can't control it.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't have a lot of respect for her, but at the same time, there was still that love. I still wanted to love her and to be loved by her, and I still was very attached. And that moment of finding those wine bottles just snapped the cord.
Yeah.
Because thinking of all of that just hitting me in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And then I guess just having tried so hard for my whole life to, love her. Even though there were moments where, I didn't want her to come home or, I ran away. I don't even know how many times when I was a kid. I still wanted that relationship with her. I wanted the relationship that I saw other people getting to have with their moms or that I saw on TV. And just realizing that was never going to happen. And it's not because of something that she can't help. It's because she chooses to drink.
Yeah.
And she knows the effect that it has on her, and she knows the effect that it has on our relationship, and obviously she doesn't care. So I'm not going to care.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just want to touch up real quick though. It seemed like from the outside looking in, maybe like your friends or maybe classmates or whatever, it seemed like everything was good, like in normal. And because you're in a nice little town, and she probably had some sort of success, right? And raising you by herself, and it just seems like it was all but that behind closed doors.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a CPS record. It's like, what is it? It's 11 different CPS reports.
Wow, that's insane.
In like 10 years.
That's
over,
fucking crazy.
Yeah, over 3 different counties.
Oh my God.
But nothing ever came of them.
Right.
Because a lot of it was centered on, some of it was for physical abuse. I think like it's either 2 or 3 of them were for physical abuse, but everything else was for like general neglect and emotional abuse. And that's really difficult to prove.
When, especially if it's a child. Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's general neglect is like you don't have food, you don't have water, you don't have clothes. I had all that. I had all that and more. I can be perfectly honest and say that I was a very spoiled child. I had everything that,
materials.
Yeah, materialistically, I had everything that a kid could want. I never wanted for anything materialistically. And so it's really difficult for anybody in an outside agency to see that and be like, oh, well, she's still not being taken care of.
Yeah.
Especially when I don't have visible bruises on my body that you can see without taking my shirt off.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where, I know how it looked and even how it looked to my family, because it's not like I ever told my family what was going on. Obviously, my mom never would have told them what was going on. She ain't telling
herself.
But, there were some things that I didn't find out until later that, that might have given an inkling that something was happening.
Yeah.
Like, I guess my mom actually got a DUI with me and my 2 cousins in the car.
Oh, no fucking way.
And my uncle.
And nothing happened of it?
Nope. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what she had to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a big fucking no-no.
But it must have been when I was really young. But I know that my uncle like would not allow my mom to take my cousins anywhere after that.
Yeah, they're like, hell no, dude.
So I'm like, obviously you didn't want your kids around my mom.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know?
right.
Like I don't know if you just didn't think that extended to me or what, but
You're on your own.
Yeah.
Shit, dude.
you know, but I also understand my family has gone through a lot generationally.
Yeah.
Like her mom was also, you know, she drank, she was bipolar, and she was extremely abusive.
I see.
Like kicking my mom downstairs, throwing things at her, locking her in a pantry for hours.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So that's why, obviously,
I mean,
it carried with her.
Oh yeah, she learned it from the knee.
Yeah.
But you know, my grandfather comes from, you know, he was a nuclear engineer, so he's very well to do as well, owned his own company.
I see.
But you know, before he got into that, he had his own past.
Oh, no shit.
Yep. And
Wow.
yeah, when he told me about it, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense.
But the man's a nuclear engineer, dude. That's some fucking like.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's some shit I'll never fuck with.
I was like, oh my god, that makes so much sense of why our family is the way that it is.
Fuck.
You know, after he divorced my mom's mom and married his second wife, my nana.
Yeah.
You know, they had already moved out to California, and I think that my grandfather and my uncles and my mom tried really hard to separate themselves from that early part of my grandfather's life.
I see.
And so, you know, anything that messed with the image of now we're good.
No, yeah, right.
Now we're straight. Now we are, you know, we're healthy. Now we're all of these things. We're never going to go backwards.
Right.
And me and my mom just fucked with that image so bad.
Hell yeah.
You know, first it was her and then it was me and her because, you know, obviously I perpetuated it. And it was just... Oh yeah, we completely trashed the white picket fence that they were trying so hard to hold on to.
Oh my god, that's so funny because I could actually relate to that a little bit. I got family members that are doing well in life, you know. God, and I don't want to put too much of my family business out there, but like, you know, I had a relative that, you know, had the perfect surface, you know, and very successful, a millionaire, you know, owned many properties here in San Diego and stuff like that. And God, he was such a fucking piece of shit of a human, though, you know, and it tormented some of my family members, and then just carried on, you know, just passed down the lineage, and then. And then you get me, you know, and I'm the fuck up of the fuck ups. You know, but that I relate a lot though when you're describing that right now, man. And Jesus, it's just like, you know, like that money and that surface, man, it doesn't solve fucking shit, dude.
No, and I don't, and that's the thing is, I know that it goes deeper than that. I know
obviously,
yeah, they just genuinely wanted to separate themselves from something that was extremely traumatic in their lives when they were younger.
Right.
And, you know, it just was something that ruined their life and was extremely traumatic. And here's my mom bringing it all back, and then she has me, and I bring it back tenfold, you know? I just... pulling them and tearing them down, and they wanted to forget about the past. They wanted to put it behind them and never mention it again. And my mom wasn't having it.
Yeah.
You know, she was the emotional one that couldn't compartmentalize the trauma and bury it deep enough where no one could see. Like, she was the one that it still affected her every day.
It did.
And so
Obviously.
I think she was just a continuous reminder that that really happened to them, and that's where they came from, and that's what they lived through. And then I came along, and I was worse than her,
Yeah.
you know. So I was the demon child, and
Demon.
you know, it's easier to blame it on, oh, she was just born bad, or there's just something wrong with her,
Right.
than having to start tipping over the dominoes. Because
Right.
if I learned it from somebody, where did that somebody learn it from?
Yeah.
And
Right.
you know, going all the way back, and it's just not
It's an
something.
endless chain of reaction.
Yeah, and it's just not something that not a lot of people want to deal with. But also, if it's not really affecting their lives in a negative way,
Right.
they don't really have to.
Yeah.
You know, it's not
Yeah.
life or death
For
the way
them.
that it is for people in addiction. We got to
Yeah.
deal with that shit, or it's going to take us down.
Right. That's very
So,
true.
It's
It's easier just to turn a blind eye to it. Yeah.
it's also just really, really painful. I know that, like, for my grandfather, he's still in denial for a lot of the things that I did.
Okay.
I've told him numerous times,
Yeah.
like, about my crime and my part that I played in it, and
Yeah.
he still continues to put quite a bit of it on my co-defendant, and
Okay.
like things that genuinely,
It's how he copes.
yeah, and
Exactly.
I get it, but you know,
absolutely.
sometimes, like, when we would have to have those discussions, it's really frustrating,
Yeah.
because it didn't register, and it was just because opening that can of worms it was too painful for him. I just don't think that he could handle that amount of pain, and I don't blame him for that at all.
Yeah.
I know it's painful. It wasn't his life on the line that he had to dig into it, or he was gonna, you know, die in prison the way that I was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. So let's go. You're starting to smoke and or no, drink, right? You started drinking at 13.
well, so I mean, yeah, everything kind of started at 13.
Right.
I,
That's your lucky number.
yeah.
And you started going out with your co-defendant.
Yeah, I started smoking, I think, like, in June, probably, of 2008.
Yeah.
And so when I was 13, and then throughout the next couple of months, you know, started smoking weed,
Okay.
started drinking.
Okay.
I didn't do anything harder than that, and I wasn't doing it every day. It was more like one of those things where if I was hanging out with somebody that I wanted to be accepted by, and they had weed on them or they had alcohol on them, it was like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. You know, I'm going to be as much like you as possible to try to convince you to like me. So why wouldn't I? So I was really only, like, smoking weed maybe like once or twice a month.
Oh, I see.
Maybe.
Yeah. Like it was really recreational.
Yeah. And I drank even less than that. As strange as it sounds, living in the house with an alcoholic, I had less access to alcohol than I did marijuana.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's just that I always think that that's the funniest thing, though, too, because people are always like, yeah, you know, I started drinking at a really young age. I'm like, no, because
well, I drank technically.
yeah. I'm like, when you live in the house with I really hate the term, and I don't think it exists, but a lot of people love using the word functional addict or functional alcoholic.
Yeah, there's
I just think,
sure. I get what you're saying.
in my head, if you're functioning, you can't be functioning and an addict. Because if you were functioning, you wouldn't need the addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so she was going to work. She, you know, had a very, you know, 9-to-5 job. She worked for the county.
Oh, nice.
And she knew how much liquor was in the house. There was,
yeah. You can't sneak that out.
No, not at all. Like, she kept just enough to be able to get drunk on. She didn't keep an excessive amount.
Right.
So it's not like I could steal some and she wouldn't notice. It was, I steal some, she doesn't have enough to get drunk. Obviously, she noticed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you ain't getting in the way of that.
Yeah, no, I mess with the high. Oh God, no.
Fuck no.
You know?
God, and you so what other forms of escape were you doing though? Like before all this build up to age 13? What would you do to keep occupied?
I mean, really, I was a huge loner,
Mhm.
and I just lived in my head a lot.
I see.
I had this view of myself that I don't think I wouldn't have put it in those words if someone had asked me. But if someone had asked me, do you feel like you're human?
Yeah.
I would have said no,
Yeah.
And so that feeling of being subhuman, I romanticized it to try to take some of the pain out.
Yeah.
And so
I
it
see
was, oh, I'm a vampire or I'm a werewolf.
Yeah.
Because, those are not quite human
Right.
things, but
Right.
they're still cool. You
Right.
know, like I could be not human and still, be something that was cool or romanticized.
Yeah.
But I still felt that very, prevalent feeling of just not being like anyone else, being
Mhm.
a monster, being subhuman. Like something was very broken and
see.
wrong with me.
I
And
see.
so I lived in my head a lot, and the small ways that I was able to feel in control of my life, I was either first it was biting, and then it was cutting
Okay.
for self-mutilation.
Yes.
And plenty of suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And that actually used to make me feel better for some reason.
I see.
I used
Yeah.
to,
No. Yeah.
Imagine the whole action and then imagine like the funeral afterwards.
I see. Romanticizing your own death.
Yeah, pretty much. Although it really wasn't romanticizing, because I would think about my family and
Okay.
the honesty that if I died, my family probably would be sad for, a day.
Day. Aw.
A day or two, but they really wouldn't care, And
Yeah.
I didn't have any friends. The
I
one
see.
person that was going to care if I died was my mom.
I see.
That was the only person that would care whether or not I lived or died.
Mm.
And
I see.
so that created a really toxic bond with her of,
I can see that. 100%.
if the only person who cares whether or not you're alive is the person who's doing the most damage to you,
Yeah.
it's just that horrible feeling of like you're the only person I have, but you hurt me the most.
Yeah.
And never quite knowing whether or not I wanted to be loved by her or whether or not I just wanted her to leave me alone and never come home.
I see.
And so there was a lot of imagining things, just like imagining different lives,
Right.
playing in fantasy a lot,
I see.
but also just thinking that I could change things. When I was about 11, 12, I started getting into like witchcraft.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And using it in such a horrible way.
Of course.
Like it's a true
Curse this motherfucker right here.
No, actually, that's the funny thing is I never used it to curse or do
Oh, no?
anything negatively to anyone else.
Oh,
Not
I
even
see.
not even my mom.
Oh, no.
But
Aw.
I used it to try to control aspects of my life that I felt like were out of control.
I see.
And like to get someone to stop bullying me. Not that something bad would happen to them, but just that they couldn't bully me anymore.
Okay.
Things like that. And
I see.
or just being happy. It's more like trying to do wish fulfillment with
I see.
magic.
Right.
And obviously I know a lot more about it today, and that's absolutely not how it works. But
Right.
Especially when it comes from such a selfish, twisted
Right.
headspace.
Right.
But that was, what I resorted to, and just kind of developing this mind frame where if the whole world or the universe kind of worked along somewhat of a mathematical principle, X plus Y equals Z.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do certain things and you add them to other certain things, the outcome will come out the way that you want them to.
Yeah.
Whether that was actual factual universal principles, like, the law of gravity,
Yeah.
or things that, I learned in books, like about, eternity, souls,
Yeah.
or stuff that I made up in my own head that I just wanted to be true.
Right. Right.
But I believed in it, and I wanted to believe in it so much, so that way I felt like I had some semblance of control over my life.
Right.
And that was kind of how I got through all of my days.
That's it. Okay.
And then when I started getting friends, I did not know another way to communicate to another person other than to be manipulative.
I see.
My whole basis of dealing with reality was manipulation.
Okay.
Magic was a way to manipulate life.
Yeah.
Talking was a way to manipulate people.
Yeah.
Emotions was a way to manipulate myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I just didn't know any other way. And so that's how I dealt with it. And that and hurting myself, and then eventually starting to do drugs until I met my co-defendant. I was just extremely broken and living in half a fantasy world,
Right.
and not in reality at all.
Right.
And I guess it just felt like looking back on it, it just feels like a flail. Like I was flailing around in this pool, blind, deaf, and dumb for, a little bit over 14 years of my life. And I was just so scared, and I was so desperate that by the time I was 13, or by the time I was 14, I didn't care what I was knocking into anymore. I didn't care what I was hurting. I didn't care who I was hurting, as long as the emotions that were going on inside my head settled down.
Yeah.
Like if I felt overwhelmed, I was going to do absolutely everything to calm myself down. If that was cutting, if that was screaming, if that was, using, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then I met my co-defendant, and so by this time it's been about 6 months that I'd known my mom was an alcoholic and an addict, and everything had just gone so downhill.
Yeah.
Like ever since then, because instead of being this, semi-obedient kid and having like developed a budding respect for my mom and camaraderie with her and wanting to work with her on a relationship, it took a complete 180 and started going in the other direction faster than the speeding bullet.
It seemed like it. Jeez.
I chucked it into the trash. I basically felt like she'd been flipping me the bird my whole life. And so I turned around and I started saying, fuck you back.
Yeah.
I didn't obey any rules, absolutely no respect. Nothing she said to me mattered. I just did whatever I wanted to do to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And if that meant going out late at night and hanging out with people, burglarizing houses, skipping school, not doing homework, just basically pissing all over every rule, any boundary that she ever set or that anyone ever set at that point. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want to do to make myself feel good.
Yeah.
And then I met my co-defendant in December of 2008, and the first night I met him, I was at Town Center at a coffee shop hanging out with two of my friends. And
how old were you?
I was 14.
14.
I just turned 14.
Okay.
And I was supposed to have gone home earlier that night.
Yeah.
My mom was supposed to come pick me up, but she pulled up, and as soon as I opened the car door, she was drunk. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not getting in the car. I'm definitely not allowing my friend to get in the car with you drunk, because I'd have had to get in the car and actually drive her home a couple of times.
Jesus Christ, really?
Yeah, because it just wasn't safe. I remember one time I had a friend in the car, and she almost drove the car into a 7-Eleven.
God damn.
Like she drove up over the curb.
Fuck.
If she was sideways enough that she didn't hit the the disability placard.
Yeah.
And she almost like, I was like, oh God, you know.
God
So
damn,
on the
dude.
way home, I'm like, yeah, you're not driving, I'm driving.
Is that how you learn how to drive?
Yeah. Don't know any of the laws around it, but I know how to steer.
Okay.
But yeah, so and it's funny because around that time she actually started teaching me how to drive when she was sober, and I
right.
think at some point she realized that she needed to teach me because I was the only one that was
you're gonna be
get her
the
home.
designated driver.
Yeah. She never said it like that, but it's
it was probably
interesting how that just happened
yeah,
around the same time.
Yeah. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
you want to teach me how to drive. Wow, dude. And
But
God, so you so you're in the mall, the coffee shop. You pretty much told your mom to go fuck off because she was drunk.
yeah, so I asked her if Brett's dad could drive us home,
Okay.
and she talked to his mom on the phone. I'm not really sure what Brett's mom thought about that because you could very clearly hear that she was slurring her words. But you know, I'm sure Brett's mom was like, "Yeah, please let my husband drive our children home, thank you." But so she left, and then we were sitting at the coffee shop, and this guy walks in, and Brett gets up and says, "Oh, Boston." He walks over and gives him a hug. And I'd heard about him a lot. I heard about him through my whole freshman year.
Okay.
Or that part of the freshman year. And
Was he like a popular guy?
yeah, he was kind of like the head of the group. They didn't have like a leader or anything else like that, but he was, I think, one of like the focal points of the group, the way that my best friend at the time, his nickname was God.
God?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a humble name.
I mean, he didn't give himself that name. People started calling him that. I can't remember how he got it. I think it had something to do with a video game, but it just
he was a good video gamer, and they're just like, you are a god.
I don't know. But it just ended up sticking. So, but I had he ended up kind of becoming the focal point after Boston graduated. But everyone who I hung around, because I hung around mostly like because I was a freshman, but I usually hung around more like sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Okay.
And everyone used to talk about him.
Okay.
Because, you know, he was the focal point just the last year. And
I see.
One of my good friends, Shamia, she constantly told me, she's like, you would love him. You have to meet him. And I'm like, because he and God had a relationship at one point.
Oh, they are bisexual.
God was gay.
Oh, God was straight gay.
Yeah, and Boston was bi.
Bi. Oh, okay. Oh, wow, interesting.
But they had been in a relationship, and Boston had dumped God, and
oh, wow,
I knew that God still had like feelings for him, or seemed like he still had feelings for him.
So you didn't want to upset him?
Well, it was more like I was protective and just kind of like, oh, well, you hurt my best friend. Fuck you. I've never met you before. I don't know you from Adam, but still, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know? But so when Brett introduced me to him, I was kind of like, nah, you know?
Okay.
But he ordered his coffee. He went outside to go smoke a cigarette, and obviously I'm 14, so I'll bum smokes off anybody.
Oh yeah.
Even my worst enemy.
Plug right there.
Yeah,
right.
So I went outside and I asked to bum a cigarette. He gave me one, and then he ended up fixing a bunch of my lighters, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe you're.
Oh, the child.
Yeah, the child safety locks. Yeah.
What a cool guy.
I know. I think back on that, I'm just like, God, that's so juvenile. Like, can you imagine like telling like a badass story?
Yeah.
You're back in your days of like being a dumbass kid, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, I couldn't use a lighter if it had a child safety lock on it. Fuck.
Was it a little hard on your thumbs?
They used to rip up my thumbs.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, they still do, by the way.
I got used to them.
Just...
They didn't bug me. I got used to that shit.
Well, it's just I have really soft hands. Like I worked 2.5 years in construction, never got a callus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I worked
Oh
in
yeah, look
I
at
worked
those.
in concrete.
Look at those pretty hands.
Like I was a concrete mason and a block mason.
Fuck yeah.
You know, and I was an electrician for a year before that. So it's not like I've been doing like ferry jobs or anything else like that. It's just never changed.
You're just blessed with good hands.
Yeah, I guess so.
So this fucking guy, he impresses you and woos you with this
Yes.
trick of
Yep.
taking this ass.
And it was so, it's so sad to say it, but it was so cool the way that he did it. He just pulls out a knife, flicks it open, and just starts popping shit off. And I was like, 14-year-old self, cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old was this man?
He was 19.
19 years old. I see.
Yeah.
19-year-old hanging out with a freshman,
yeah.
14-year-old freshman girl in high school.
I don't know how old he thought I was, but
Oh, really?
I mean, I had the most anybody had ever attributed to me age-wise was like 17. So no matter what, I was still below the cutoff.
She kind of looks 17. I mean, it's 18, so that's the legal age. I mean.
But so because he did that, I wanted to thank him, so I offered for him to come smoke some weed with me, Brett, and our other friend. And we smoked some weed, and I ended up having a conversation with him off to the side.
Yeah.
For like 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I don't really remember what we were talking about. I'm pretty sure I just kind of spilled my guts. And it was the first time I had ever done that. I didn't do that with any of my friends. Like I never told them what was going on in my house, but for some reason I did it with him.
I see.
And he just listened to me. And I'm sure the marijuana had a part to play in why I felt so, like happy about that.
Yeah.
But, when we walked away from that and then we were back at Habit and Brett's dad called saying that he wasn't going to be getting off of work until after 1.
Okay.
And there was a curfew in my town. So anybody under the age of, I think it was like 16, you had to be inside by 11 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it was already past that. But we couldn't walk home. It was only 5 miles. It wasn't that big a deal. I'd walk that stretch all the time.
Yeah.
But it was just at that time of night, and there's cops.
You can get pulled over.
Yeah, and get a citation and all this other crap. So, and I tried calling my mom. No surprise, it went to voicemail.
Right.
And both the house and her cell phone. No answer. Shouldn't have expected it, but so there was no way for us to get home. So what's the only option is to really ask the guy with the car, which was Boston. And I asked him, like, look, I know I don't really know you, but we need a ride home. Is there any way you could give me a ride home? I'll pay for your gas. And he's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. So he gave us a ride home.
Yeah.
And from that moment, it's ironic how much it kind of like set the tone for the rest of our relationship of something happens with my mom due to alcoholism, and he kind of just stepped in to at my time in my head save the day.
Yeah.
And so the next week I was at Habit, 'cause Town Center, that's where we hung out. And I saw him again.
Yeah.
I don't know if he like got a change in his shift at work or whatever, but he started going there every week.
Okay.
And so the next week he asked for my phone number, and I gave it to him.
And he knew that you were a minor. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. He said at the time that he asked for my phone number just because he had everybody's phone number.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how true that is today.
Well, I'm sure he has a huge list of fucking phone numbers.
I mean, he did in his phone. He really did. He had everybody's phone number.
Okay.
But, I don't know what the true motive was behind asking me for mine.
Yeah.
But my friend Shamia, who was 16, had a major crush on him.
Oh, wow,
And
really?
I had a boyfriend at the time. So it was
Oh, you had a boyfriend?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, he was in juvie, but he was my boyfriend.
He was in juvie?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, my fucking God.
I know how to pick him, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Fucking young Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
So, why was this guy in juvie?
I think think it has something to do with drug use.
Oh, okay.
Shocker.
Shocker.
Yeah.
He's so cool. So, okay, so you're in a relationship with someone in juvie, and you're talking to this man.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't talking to him like that.
But
It was
but
actually, yeah, as
like friendship
mhm.
at first.
Yeah, it was really more like my friend Shamia. She had a huge crush on him.
Yeah.
And so she wanted to hang out with him. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll be the third wheel.
Yeah.
Whatever. Because if God wasn't there and I wasn't hanging out with him, then I'd be hanging out with Shamia.
Yeah.
And so we ended up just hanging out, the three of us, like Friday, Saturday, and then sometimes Sunday day.
Okay.
And it was just so often. And then he became the person that I was buying my smokes off of.
Mm-hmm.
And soon it started kind of developing into things kind of like I started noticing that he was paying attention more to me than he was to Shamia. Like she was trying. She was flat out flirting with him, making it very obvious that she was interested in him.
So I want that girl that's younger. Fucker.
I guess. I don't know. I just little things that started like kind of like adding up and becoming this, you know, the flag started flying and you're like, I think he's interested in me. Yeah. But like I said, I still had a boyfriend. So I wasn't, it was kind of
you
like,
weren't going to engage?
Not
like
really.
That, no.
Like, I mean, I was a huge flirt. So I would still flirt, but I wasn't.
Oh, I see.
I wasn't.
You teased them a little.
Yeah,
like
I wasn't interested at the time, and I just figured he was. He was subtle enough about it that it wasn't like blatantly obvious. So it could have just been one of those things where maybe he's just being nice, you know. But as our friendship started progressing, we started talking a lot more, and he started. One time I ran out of smokes in the middle of the week, and I asked him if he could drop off a pack at my house on his way home from work. Yeah. And that was the first time that we ended up spending most of the night in his car, and we were just talking. I think I talked to him for like 4 hours, maybe 5.
I see.
And I don't even know what we talked about. I just know that I was the one that did most of the talking, and that was a huge game changer for me because I didn't talk to people like that. Yeah. You know, I had friends, but none of my friends knew what was going on with my mom. Okay. And whenever I talked about my friends to my mom, I actually talked her up, you know? My house was the cool house. My house was where if anybody else's parents kicked them out, they knew that they could come knock on my door at 2:00 in the morning, and they would have a bed, and my mom would wake up and she would make them hot chocolate, some chicken noodle soup, sit in front of the TV, and then go back to bed. Right. That was genuinely that was the kind of person she was when she wasn't, drinking.
Drinking, yes.
And so I think it was just this. I wanted it as much as I wanted to portray it, which was my mom is the shit. Right. You all know my mom's the shit. Like she's bomb. And I wanted that image. Like I wanted that to be the truth. So the same thing. If I say it enough and I believe it enough, or I try to believe it enough, maybe I can make it happen. Right. Or I can just pretend that it's true, so that way it's true for right now. Yeah. If everyone else believes it's true, then that means it is true with these people. Right. But I had never really talked to anybody about like what really went on in my house and the bad parts about it until I met him, until I met Steven. And
so he was someone you can go to.
Yeah. And he just became my confidant. And then it was sometime the next week or so, I was hanging out with my friend God, and I found out that he was going to try cocaine for the first time.
Oh, I see.
And I was scared shitless for him. Because he was born addicted to heroin, I think. It was some.
Really?
Yeah, it was either crack or heroin. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Like when he was inside his mother's womb, she had drugs in the system.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his biological dad was in prison. His biological mom was a drug addict, and he was adopted.
Oh God. So it wasn't looking good for old God over here.
Yeah. And he had told me before, previously, that he knew the first time that he ever tried coke, he was going to be addicted. And he's telling me at that moment that he's going to try coke for the first time that night. I started flipping out.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, I was so scared. I was so upset. I used to have this thing with my friends that I would like steal, but not steal because they knew I had it, like pieces of clothing.
Okay.
Or like a bracelet.
Yeah.
And that was my way of like having a piece of them. And so with God, I had his glove.
I see.
And I went up to him when I found out that I was freaking out in town center. He said he didn't know if he was going to do it. And then I found him. He left to go do something with another one of our friends. And then he came back, and I asked him if he had done it. And I begged him not to.
Yeah.
And then he told me that he was high, and I just started crying. I went up to him and like this group of people.
Yeah.
I handed back his glove. I didn't say anything to him, and then I left. And then Steven or Boston found me on a bench sitting away, and he's like, "What happened?" And I explained everything to him.
Yeah.
And I just started bawling.
I see.
And so he pretty much spent like the next 20 minutes trying to comfort me.
Yeah.
One of my friends came up and asked me what was wrong.
Yeah.
And I explained to them what happened. And they're like, I don't understand. Why are you so upset? And Boston, actually snapped at my friend. It's like, how do you not understand this? Somebody that she loves and cares about, who is going to be addicted to this substance from here on out, just told her that he did coke for the first time. Like, how are you not upset about it?
Right.
And that made me feel so like understood.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, somebody else gets it. Somebody else understands what's going on inside my head. And I'd never felt that way before. I'd been going to shrinks since I was 4 years old.
You grew up to it.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I had never felt like somebody understood what was truly going on inside my head.
Right.
And
Right. This guy,
yeah,
I get that.
And so my mom came and picked me up. I left. And, from that day, I think it was probably like the next week, I ended up having like a knockdown, drag out fight with my mom right before I went to school. Showed up at school late, crying my eyes out, having to, fix myself up before I went to class. And by the end of the day, I couldn't get over it. I couldn't get past it. And so I finally texted him and I said, hey, I don't need smokes. I just need somebody to talk to. Can you please come by tonight? And he did. And we did that whole thing where I sat in his car and we talked until like maybe 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then after that became pretty regular. First it was like once, then it was twice a week, and then it was 3 times a week. And that's not counting the weekends.
Yeah.
So
you two are just talking and being very friendly.
Yeah. And he became very protective of me and very, I started calling him like my big brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I started calling him Big Brother because that's the role that he was essentially filling in my life.
I do see that to a degree, but I also see a big fucking creep at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that understanding comes later.
Yes.
At the time, this is just my 14-year-old understanding of all the crap.
I see where it started though, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just my part of it. Like, I can't speak to his part.
Right. Right. Of course.
But he ended up meeting my mom.
So you met your mom after this?
In a very interesting way. A friend of mine, old friend from my old town.
Yeah.
I only had like 2 friends.
No, okay.
from birth to middle school.
Easy to remember.
She was coming over for Martin Luther King weekend.
Yeah.
And she was spending the night, and I needed a pack of smokes, so I went out to go get them from Boston, and I wanted her to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up going back inside because she didn't want to be outside. My mom had asked us not to leave the property.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, did not listen.
Yeah.
My friend did, though. Good on her. She went back inside, but she turned on the TV, which woke my mom up.
Oh.
And at that time, I was already off the premises with Boston. I wanted to show him like a view that I went to go look at a lot when I was out smoking.
Yeah.
And when we were coming back, I saw the lights on my front porch.
Oh,
and I instantly knew my mom was up. She was pissed.
Ooh.
And I had left my phone in the house, and Boston's phone had slipped out of his pants in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So none of us knew that she had been trying to get a hold of us.
Jesus.
Because she tried calling my phone first, found it in the house, then she went through my phone to find his contact, tried calling him, and he didn't answer.
Yeah.
So all she knows is that there's a guy that's old enough to drive a car out in the middle of the night with my 14-year-old daughter.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, understandably, she was fucking through the roof.
Hell yeah.
And so I told him, get in your car, drive now. And went to the house and went to go open the door. She opened it for me. She told me, get inside now.
Of course.
I did.
Yeah.
Sober mom that is angry is someone you listen to.
Right.
You know? I went inside and I just waited.
Uh-huh.
And so many minutes went by. Finally, she comes back in. She's completely calm.
Really?
And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like,
What happened? What happened? What the
reaction,
hell?
something. She's like, this is all she said to me. She goes, he's really smooth.
Huh? Yeah, wow.
And I was just like, what?
What?
You know, and she's like, he was kind of so smooth it made me want to smack him. I was like,
God, what the fuck?
Okay. And she's like, yeah, I told him to come in after he gets his phone, you know? So he came back inside. She was like, hey, do you want some pizza?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So she talked to him for a little bit. And then he's like, yeah, well, I gotta go now. Like, I'm gonna go now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can I give him a hug? And my mom's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I gave him like a really awkward side hug. And then he left. And the next day, I texted him first thing in the morning. I'm like, what the fuck did you say to her?
Yeah.
You know, 'cause she was totally calm. She didn't lecture me, nothing.
Yeah.
All she did was tell me, next time you leave the house, make sure you have your phone on you. That's all she said.
Wow, that's so wild.
And
wow.
basically,
What did he say?
he said when she came out, she was yelling and cussing up a storm. She said, what is wrong with you? Who do you think you are? I have no idea who you are. Do you have any idea what this looks like?
Yeah.
You know, and he waited until she was finished and he goes, ma'am, I'm so sorry. My name is Steven, but your daughter calls me Boston. That's my nickname.
Yeah.
Yes, I do understand what this looks like. I'm 19. Your daughter's 14. It's late at night. You don't know where we are. I did not have my phone on you. You couldn't get a hold of her. You couldn't get a hold of me. I completely understand why you are so upset, and I'm extremely sorry.
Jesus Christ.
And it was just whoosh.
Wow, you just fucking slid out of that.
And like from that moment, like that was like, oh, so you speak my mom.
Yeah.
You speak that language, because I could speak parent with any of my friends' parents, but when it came to my mother, obviously
shut you down.
Yeah, but with her, apparently he could speak parent to my mom.
Wow.
And so again, that re-solidifying of just like,
Jesus.
you're the dude.
Right.
And even more so, like, it started kind of ingraining in that big brother role, because when my mom would wake up in the middle of the night, from that point forward, she couldn't find me. All she had to do was poke her head outside and see his car and say, okay, you know, time to come inside now. Hi, Boston. How are you?
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
And then I would come inside. Like, we weren't going anywhere. We were literally parked in the court.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started kind of like integrating him into our family unit. He started getting invited over for like family dinners.
No shit.
And he was the one that was picking me up from school.
Wow.
Like a couple days out of the week.
Wow.
There were days when he would pick me up from school just to drive me home.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And it
was like a normal thing.
Yep. It just became, totally normal. And my mom started referring to him as my big brother.
Wow.
She also started calling him like my guardian angel.
Did she ever at one point think that he was, I guess, had the intentions of having a sexual relationship with you or like you being an intimate partner? She
Nope.
just thought he was just an older guy that's just looking out for a 14-year-old girl.
Yep.
Okay.
And my boyfriend got out of juvie a little bit after she met him. She met Boston, and what ended up happening was, I think it was like a week after he got out, we were supposed to meet up at Town Center, but I ended up getting grounded. So Boston was going to come over and have family dinner, but he was going to go to Town Center first.
Okay.
He came home, he came to my house after about half an hour, and he took me for a walk, and he told me that my boyfriend was doing drugs.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and me and my boyfriend had a conversation, and he had promised me he wasn't going to use anymore because, going back to jail.
Yeah.
And I had also told him, like, hey, if you're going to break that promise, call me and let me know. So that way I'll know what happens if I don't hear from you.
Right.
I know where you went.
Right.
And so when Boston came in, he told me that, I was like, oh. I just started crying.
This sounds like you just trying to want to get him out of the picture, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's actually what happened.
Oh, that guy's totally good dog.
Yeah,
you don't want to be around him.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know until later when I was in juvie, and then obviously he ended up getting locked back up.
Yeah. And
when we were talking in juvie, he's like, hey, by the way, you know that Boston is the one that sold me those drugs.
Wow. Oh, man.
Like,
oh, what a dirtbag. Oh,
I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, Boston's the one that sold me those drugs that I was taking that night.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, my God.
This motherfucker had a plan.
Yeah, I was like, that was the first moment that I actually started like turning on him in my head.
Yeah.
Obviously after I was arrested, I was like, you fucking manipulated me.
Yeah.
This whole time I thought I manipulated the fuck out of you, but
you
did the same thing back.
Yep. Jesus.
And I did,
Christ.
for my part, I manipulated the ever living fuck out of him. I had no qualms about it.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it obviously in malicious terms.
Yeah.
But I made myself as helpless as possible. Yeah. So that way he would feel responsible for me and that he wouldn't leave me.
I see.
If he was responsible for keeping me safe and sane, then he knew like if he left, I was either going to be hurt by my mom or I was going to kill myself or I was going to go nuts.
Yeah.
One of the three. So, and he took that on and, took on that responsibility, but I did everything in my power to reinforce it. But that was the first moment where I was like, when I found that out, I was like, oh, okay. So you really did manipulate me too. It wasn't just me and you're totally
mutual
innocent.
manipulation here.
Yeah. Because what Boston had told me was that our mutual friend Graham had been the one to sell the drugs to my boyfriend at the time.
Right.
And so he took me to Town Center to be able to break up with dude.
Oh, wow.
And then
how convenient.
When we smoked a bowl of weed, we went home.
Yeah.
And what was it? That was Friday, and then that was Friday night, and then Sunday night he ended up asking me to be his girlfriend.
Wow. Just straight up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're sitting in the car, one of our normal, late night talks, and he just told me that he really liked me and that he wanted to be with me, and then he asked me to be his girlfriend. I was
wow.
Like, yeah,
And you just said yes?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, at that point, he was my higher power. He was my big brother. He was, as
Oh,
gross and as fucked up as it sounds, he was basically acting in a paternal capacity in my life. He was like a father.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing even more than that after he moved in.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
he took care of me the way that really only like a big brother or a father usually would take care of a girl.
God damn.
And so he was everything that I'd ever been looking for my entire life.
Yeah.
He was the parent that I always wanted. He was the friend that I'd always wanted. He's just that person.
Yeah.
And so you add into that physical attraction and the fact that he's physically attracted to me.
Yeah.
For an extremely codependent 14-year-old fucked up in the head little girl.
Yeah.
It
is
toxic heaven in the making.
Right. And then it's just so fucking wild though that it was all these like games and manipulation to hook up with a fucking 14-year-old fucking girl. It's just it's so fucking wild. I don't know what the fuck was going on in that guy's fucking head, but Jesus Christ. So all right. So now he's moved in with you now.
Yeah, well, he didn't move in for about a month. It took from the time that we started dating and then he moved in, I think it was probably like in April.
Okay. So it was a little bit of a build up, a tiny bit of a build up before.
Fucking exactly like 15 years ago. I just fucking realized that.
Oh, happy anniversary. So okay, so you guys are dating.
Yeah.
You guys are it's starting to get more physical and stuff like that.
Yeah, we started having sex within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the part that always had me like taking on like the fullness of the manipulation in our relationship and the blame was that I had to convince him to have sex with me, or so I thought.
Oh, so you thought. Oh,
So
right. Oh, yes.
And it took 2 weeks of trying to push him into it, and finally,
of course,
we did. And so it was a little bit after that he moved in. I obviously lied to my mom. She didn't know we were dating.
Yeah.
But
because she wouldn't have been cool with it if you wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think she would have had I don't know if she would have had a problem if we had been dating, just period.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have any issue when I had talked to her about dating an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, well.
But I don't know why she would have thought like dating and sex wouldn't have gone hand in hand, but whatever.
Right. All you guys are like holding hands and kissing and shit like that.
It's a so-called innocence. I'm like, with my childhood, do you really think innocence is, obviously.
Right. Jesus. Right.
And
then okay, so you guys are for sure a thing.
Yeah.
And then he does move in with you.
Yeah, and that's when it became, he was such a huge part of my life. Like I've expressed it to quite a few people, and their reaction's always the same, which is like he was driving me to school every day. He was picking me up from school every day.
Yeah.
He was checking my homework. He was meeting with my teachers for parent-teacher conferences to talk about my homework and my participation in class.
Yeah.
He was on my emergency contacts card at school to pick me up if I was sick.
Mm-hmm.
He was moderating my drug intake, so he was making sure I wasn't smoking too much or taking too much ecstasy kind of thing.
Yeah.
He also made me stop cutting.
Okay.
He convinced me to stop cutting, so I did for him.
Okay.
And so he was just, he was kind of in control of my life. And I happily gave it to him. It's not like he had to try very hard. I was extremely happy to hand over all of my life decisions to another person that I thought was much more qualified than me to make them. And that was the whole higher power thing. Like he genuinely became
it definitely
my
sounds
higher
like he
power.
was your drug.
Oh, absolutely. Drug, higher power rolled into one.
Yeah.
You know, that whole, I think it's so interesting because now that I'm in recovery, you know, the third step is probably my favorite step.
Right.
But I used to practice it in such a backwards and toxic
Right,
way with
right.
him because it's like I am,
You have
know,
my life.
yeah, my will and my life, turn it over to you completely, you know, give you every situation I'm struggling with or every, you know, the stuff that's raging around in my head. I would just kind of give it to him. I'd, you know, throw up emotionally all over him and he would put back the pieces together and he'd make everything clean and make sense. And then he'd hand it back to me and say, here's what you do.
Yeah.
Here's how you feel. And I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense. Thank you so much. I did not want to have to think about that.
Right.
And any decision that he made or anything that he made make sense, I never questioned because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And my life started getting better.
Right.
So it gave that addition of now we have proof that his way of doing things and his way of thinking and his way of living or me living works.
Yeah.
So as long as if he signs off on my decisions, I don't need to question it. Even if anybody else has a problem with it, that is their problem. Yeah. No, he's God. Why would you question God?
Right. Yeah, he's God now, not no more of a God.
Yeah.
And God, it's just like it's like a schoolgirl crush on fucking steroids here.
Oh God. Fucking Hulk steroids.
Hulk steroids, man. Smash.
Yes.
So, oh my God, dude, and God, it's just so fucking crazy. So this guy is living with you. He's a 19-year-old man. He's having sex with a 14-year-old girl. And obviously, you know, the game is going to be over.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, my mom came home one day when we were having sex.
Caught you on the act?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep. And obviously she did what any sane mother would do at that point, which is get the fuck out of my house.
Right.
A couple days later, he came back to get his stuff, and she had 2 of her male coworkers with her and basically told him, like, you're never going to see her again. You're never going to talk to her again. You're never going to have contact with her again.
Yeah.
If you do, I will press charges on you for statutory rape.
Wow.
And, you know, that was the threat. And then I heard that, packed up a bag, and I left.
Oh, Jesus.
And so she can't find me. I'm not answering her calls, obviously.
Because she's the enemy. She's like straight up.
Yep.
Depriving you of your God here.
Yep. And, you know, it was the person who had and was continuing to cause me the most pain and turmoil in my life was now getting rid of the person that I believed was giving me all of the peace and soundness of mind that I'd ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that I did not realize that I had never known what it felt like to be safe until I was with Boston.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever felt safe, and it was with him. It was a moment that was in the car, and I remember that I just started crying. And he didn't know why I was crying, and I couldn't explain it to him. And until later, I realized like that was the first time in my life I ever felt safe. So not only was he my God, he was also the only safe place I had.
Yeah.
I thought in my
in this
mind.
chaotic home.
Yeah. And then my mom was getting rid of that in my head. And I didn't see anything else. I just saw that part of it. Right. And so I left, and when she couldn't, obviously she had no idea where I was. And so she sent him to go find me.
After threatening him, like, I'm going to charge you for statutory rape, you fucker.
Yep. Basically, I mean, I don't know what she said. I don't know if she said, well, I'll charge you now unless you go get her and bring her back.
Oh, yeah, right. Hey.
I mean, but still.
She had that over his head now. Yeah. That motherfucker will do it.
But he found me. And at that point, I was like, you know, I can't do this. I can't live with her alone again. Yeah. I cannot do my childhood again. Yeah. You know, because their drinking had started getting worse again.
Of course.
And so I refused. And so we had always joked that we were Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
Just hopefully we would have a better ending.
Yeah.
And so I told him, like, maybe we weren't meant to have a different ending. You know,
Yeah.
why don't we just kill ourselves? If we commit suicide together, we can be together for eternity, and nobody's going to be able to separate us.
Yeah.
And he told me, you know, no, like, that's an absolute last resort. Let's not do that right now.
Oh shit.
Why don't we run away together instead? Why don't we
Uh-huh.
try that instead first? And I was like, okay. So we talked about everything that we would need to, like, run away.
Run away. Yeah.
And after we were done with that, I, asked him, I said, but if that doesn't work, you promise that we will kill ourselves if this doesn't work. And he said, yes, I promise.
For sure.
So I said, okay. So he took me home, went home, and that next month was, that was hell, honestly. I still can't. It still just lives in my mind as a really, really hellish month. A couple, maybe a week before she found he and I having sex, she almost overdosed.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, I was downstairs and I heard this thumping because her suite was right above the kitchen and the living room.
Okay.
And I was downstairs playing video games and I heard this thump come from upstairs, and it was really loud, and it didn't sound like the door closing or the drawers in her bathroom. So I stopped and I listened, but I didn't hear anything else. I didn't hear her say anything. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I went and I started playing again, and I heard it again, thump thump, and I was like, okay, that's weird. So I paused my game. I called her. She didn't respond. So I went all the way up in her room, and I found her sitting with her back against the shower door, just gone.
God damn.
And it's the first time I'd ever seen an overdose.
Yeah.
Or like pending.
Right.
And she was just gone. And I tried talking to her. She couldn't look me in the eye. She couldn't speak. The words that were coming out of her mouth were making, like, they were just mush.
Yeah.
And I got so scared. And I was like, okay, I have to call the police. And I turned around to walk out, and as I kind of rounded the corner about to go out through her door, I heard her scream, do not call the police. Don't call the police. And I turned around and I walked back, and she had gotten up somehow. She'd locked herself in the toilet room because, very large bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to, like, you're not okay. What's wrong with you? I have to call the cops. And she said, don't call the police. And she just started screaming and pounding on the door. So what do? Call God. Call Boston.
Call God.
Yeah.
God himself will come.
Yeah. And he came home. And by the time he got home, went back upstairs, and my mom was in her bed. She'd made it back to her bed. But she still couldn't, again, she was still in that place where she couldn't look you in the eye. She couldn't speak none of the words. She was just like trying to talk, but tongue wasn't working, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he told her, Joanne, if you cannot respond to me, if you can't look me in the eye, I have to call the cops.
Yeah.
And she couldn't do it. So he told me, go call the police.
Jesus.
So I did, and the EMT showed up, and they worked on her, and they said that she wasn't overdosing. She was fine. But I was downstairs, and the second that they walked into her room, and a little bit after, like, I think maybe they woke her up a bit, I think her adrenaline started slamming because she started screaming my name at the top of her lungs.
Yeah.
And I think she was having a flashback because I had been taken from her when I was 4.
Oh, I see.
And so
By like CPS? Or?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think that that's where she was going for it, because she was screaming for me like they had taken me. And so I think, I don't know how far gone she was or whatever, but it was enough to snap her out of it. And they were able to, who's the president? What year is it? What's your name? What's your address? Because she was able to answer all those questions, they said that she wasn't intoxicated enough for them to remove from the home, because it's not illegal to be intoxicated in your home.
I see. Yeah.
And so I'm hiding behind Boston, like clutching onto him because all I can hear is her screaming my name like bloody murder down the stairs. And I'm thinking, you guys aren't going to take her. Now I have to deal with her coming downstairs knowing that I called the police on her. You're insane. So he ended up taking me to work with him. So I wasn't in the house alone with her. And I think it was later that night or maybe the next morning, I had asked her, what was that? What happened to you? That wasn't you being drunk. Because at that point, I had started calling her out on being drunk.
Right.
And she said, I just wanted to get some sleep. All I wanted to do was sleep. I'm like, yeah, but what did you take? And she said that she said, I took my psych meds, and I took my pain meds, and I tried taking some, I think it was like NyQuil.
Oh, okay.
And then she's like, but I still couldn't go to sleep, so I started drinking. So she took
the cocktail.
And I found out later what those meds were. So she took Valium, she took Vicodin, she took NyQuil, and then she drank.
Ooh, yeah. That's going to put you to sleep for a good minute.
But, like, I was so, like, I just couldn't, whatever. But I was just, I was so terrified that she was going to die. And then like, later on, I was just having that. It was disgust of dealing with the aftermath, but of her telling me what she had done and, trying to excuse it and all these other things.
Of course.
But that was really what solidified that fear when she did kick Steven out, because it was, if she's going that far when he's in the house, how far is she going to go when he's not here anymore? And when I don't have anybody to stand in between her and a drunken rage and me?
Right.
What's going to happen now?
Right.
And so like I said, that month was just really, really horrible. And
God damn.
I couldn't leave the house anymore because she would threaten to call the cops and say that I ran off with him. So
Jesus Christ.
I was on summer break, so the only time I was leaving the house was to go to summer school.
Yeah.
And it was just every night was pretty much a horror show. I did not speak to her when she was sober. When she was drunk, I pretty much treated her like, not even pretty much, I treated her like trash. I was so cruel to her, the things that came out of my mouth, and I would just rip her to pieces, emotionally, because I was so angry at her for so many things. And then inevitably during the nighttime, she would come into my room in the middle of the night and she would wake me up. She would just start screaming at me. Sometimes we get into like a physical fight. Other times it would just be a shoving match. There were a couple of times where I did threaten her with one of the pocket knives I had in my room.
Oh, no shit.
And then there were multiple times where I would either run over my bed or I would like slip around her and then get to my bathroom. Because it was the only door that had a lock on it. She wouldn't let me have a lock on my bedroom door.
Oh God. So yeah, that was the only safe place in the house.
So I would just go to sleep in my bathroom. And I wasn't getting any sleep. Every moment at home when she was home was obviously like filled with tension and stress. Yeah. And then I wasn't going to school. I was going to summer school, so I didn't have any reprieve, like hanging out with my friends. The only people I got to see were all the people that I knew that were also in summer school. But, I was pretty much grounded except for hanging out with this one girl who, funny, but my mom was like, that's the person I want you to hang out with. That's the only one you're allowed to hang out with. And she was one of the biggest drug users.
Yeah, she didn't care.
Yeah. And she was like, well, you know, obviously she's safe. And I'm like, dude, she does more drugs than almost anybody I know, you know? But,
Right,
I didn't want to hang out with her anyway. But,
Great judge of character here.
but, so this one point came where she couldn't get a hold of me.
Yeah.
And I was to be fair, I was somewhere where, I told her that I was going somewhere else, and I didn't have cell service where I was.
Yeah.
And so when she couldn't get a hold of me, she just assumed that I had run off with, Boston. And she called the cops, and then she pressed charges on him for statutory rape, and then claimed that he had like kidnapped me.
Really?
Yeah. And then I ended up calling her as soon as I got cell service, and you know, the cops came and picked me up at my friend's house, and I told him, I'm like, no, he's at work. What are you talking about? Like, we haven't seen each other. We have, but you know,
we have, but we did it that time.
no, we had seen each other earlier that day, but you know, I was like, it's still lying through my teeth. But
you got to protect the God man here.
Yeah. But you know, we hadn't run away, and I lied through my teeth to the cops, and I told them she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's drunk. She's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so for like the next 3 weeks, she had, CPS actually came and at this time, tried to interview me for the incident that happened where I called the police on her. And at that point, all of this had already happened.
Yes.
So I told them everything. I told them what she was doing. I told them what our relationship was like. I even told them that I had threatened her with a knife. Nothing happened.
Wow. Well, terrible CPS worker here.
Yeah, nothing happened. And that's not even, you know, for my sake. For her sake, they should have removed me from the home. Something. You know,
it was a very lax worker that day.
But they didn't. So you know, the next 3 weeks, my mom just kept trying to convince me to tell the police the truth about me and Steven having a sexual relationship. And sorry, Steven's his real name.
No, it's fine.
So me and Boston having this sexual relationship, and I refused every time. I just lied to them. The last time they came to interview me, they told me, like, this is the last chance you have to tell the truth. Again, lied through my teeth.
Yeah.
Next day, my mom picked me up from school. She dropped me off at home, and she told me when she dropped me off that she had given the police my diary and a towel that she was pretty sure had, you know, semen stains on it.
Okay. So evidence.
Yeah. And I absolutely lost it.
Yeah.
I just lost my mind. Because in my head, I knew that with my diary, this is extremely explicit and detailed.
Detailed.
Yeah.
I see.
That he was going to go to prison.
Yeah.
And today, as an adult, I know that probably wouldn't have happened to him. But at the time when I was 14, it was he's going to prison.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah. He's going to prison for statutory rape. I'm never going to see him, or I'm not going to see him for 5 years. And all these things. And the only thing I could think was, I can't do this. I can't live my life without him.
Yeah.
Like, I can't deal with emotions without him anymore. I can't make decisions without him anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And I refuse. I refuse. I will not do it. I will not live this life with her alone and have to deal with everything else by myself. I refuse. And I was just screaming at her incoherently. I don't remember anything making sense coming out of my mouth. And I'm sure I sounded like a demon. And she just looked at me completely disgusted, and she just said, "What is wrong with you?" And left. And I tried calling Steven. Again, wasn't making much sense. He, he just tried to get me to calm down. Finally was able to calm down, get enough out that he had some kind of understanding of what happened.
Yeah.
But not too much. He came over to the house, but by then I had a panic attack. and hyperventilated myself into blacking out. Common side effect of my panic attacks.
Right.
And so he found me and woke me up and asked me what happened, and I explained it to him. And he was just, struck because, everything's going through his head. His life's flashing before his eyes.
Right.
And we moved into the garage so we could talk about it. And finally I said, okay, we don't have what we need to run away. That option is off the table. Can we talk about suicide now? Like you promised if we couldn't run away that we could kill ourselves. Well, this is the only option we have.
Yeah.
And he was hesitant, but he agreed.
Okay.
And so his first questions were, okay, well, how are we going to kill ourselves? Where are we going to kill ourselves?
Yeah.
And that's when it starts getting back into that whole fantasy, thing, that formulaic way of living life is, if we do it exactly right, it'll turn out the way that I want it to.
Right.
So we can't die in a place that any of us have bad memories. Otherwise, it'll trap your soul there,
I see.
So, so we can't die in El Dorado Hills, so we have to go somewhere.
I see.
And we have to leave within the next, 48 hours because they're going to come and arrest you.
Yeah.
But we also have to die on our anniversary because that'll make sure that we end up in the afterlife together.
Yeah.
And we can, kill ourselves using rat poison. Cause that has,
rat poison.
Yeah. Because in my head, it's like, it has arsenic in it and da-da-da-da. It doesn't, actually.
It doesn't.
It does not.
If it could kill a rat, it could probably kill a human if you take enough.
I mean, if you take enough, but because it no longer has arsenic in it, it's a totally different way of of rat killing.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's actually works as a blood thinner now. I've come to find out. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's actually like medication.
Yeah, basically.
Wow. So what did all this rat poison do to you?
I don't know. Gave me a stomach ache. That's all I know.
Oh.
Although apparently when I go into the doctor now, they do tell me that they ask me if I'm on blood thinners. I'm like, nope.
No.
Not for 15 years.
Yeah, right.
But
Okay.
yeah, so once we kind of got like the details worked out and where we were going to die, which was San Francisco.
Yeah.
We're going to use rat poison. We're going to do it, that Monday morning at the same time that we started dating. Like just really weird shit. So it was like 3:04 in the morning.
Yeah.
And, lining it all up. And then it was, okay, well, if we have to leave within the next 48 hours, this is Thursday, and they're going to come because they're going to come and arrest you. But we can't really leave before that either, because if we're dying Monday morning, they're going to know as soon as I leave. Yeah. And they're going to put, out
a warrant.
A warrant for you and like all these things. They're going to find us before we can commit suicide.
I see.
So, how do we make sure that they don't find us? Well, the only way to make sure that they don't find us really is to make sure that it is to try to stop them from being told that we're gone.
Yeah.
Well, how on earth do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, he's an adult. He can leave at any time and tell people, yeah, I'm out, and not have to tell anybody where he's going, and nobody can say anything about it.
Yeah.
And the only person who's going to say anything about me is my mom. Yeah. And then
so she's sort of like that loose tie that you have to sever in order to formulate this suicide plan. Yeah.
Well, at that point, we thought that she was coming in through the garage, and so he hid, because we were in his office.
Yeah.
So he hid, and I went around to check the garage, and the garage door wasn't open or anything, so she wasn't coming home. I went around back to go back into her office, and he stepped out from behind the door with a katana raised over his head.
Oh, fuck.
And I know that's to this day it sounds so weird.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize that he had it with him.
Did he just carry around a Japanese sword with him?
He kept them in his trunk.
What a cool guy.
Yeah, he collected katanas, and when he moved, he had started keeping them in the back of his trunk, and he had multiple knives as well.
I see.
He had a thing with sharp implements.
I see. So he was trying to be a little ninja here and carry this sword.
Yeah, I don't know why he had it, but when he stepped out from behind the door, he had it raised above his head, and I flinched back, and I asked him, I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I thought you were your mom."
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Wow.
And I don't remember whether or not I said it or whether I just thought it.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what would you have done if I had been?
Yeah.
And I think it was from that the whole idea developed of, oh, well, we're going to make sure she doesn't tell anybody
Right.
by killing her. And
Right.
to this day, I don't remember that conversation. It's blacked out in my memory. From that point of thinking those words, you know, well, what would you have done if I had been, to being on the couch later that night.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything. I know what was said. I know, obviously, because I know what the plan was.
Right.
I knew what the plan was. So I know that at some point in that office, we talked about everything, what that we were going to do, how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I knew what the plan was when I was sitting on that couch at 10 o'clock that night. And then I also know that my mom had come home because I had testified, I had made statements to it, that my mom had come home and she had apologized to me for handing over my diary and things like that. And then she took me to the store and she got me, you know, a piece of cake.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. Didn't realize that she'd also bought herself a bottle of brandy.
Oh, whoa.
And we came home. I sat down on the couch and started playing video games.
Yeah.
And she went upstairs.
Yeah.
And I remember only a piece of that conversation, which is when we got home and she apologized and I told her that I understood.
Yeah.
And it's so weird, too. It's like two completely different halves of my personality, or like my brain was split down the middle. It was like there was this part of me that truly hated her.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
But there was also this part of me that was actually fully understood why she was doing what she was doing. Like, she was genuinely trying to be a good mom. She was genuinely trying to do what she should have been doing as a mom.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because I remember after she had kicked Steven out and she had called the cops on him and all this other stuff, I remember he and I were having a conversation and talking about what was going on, and he called my mom a bipolar bitch.
Wow.
And
Look at her.
I snapped at him so hard.
Really?
And I told him, you know, she doesn't deserve that. She's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing as a mom. Don't ever call her that again.
Wow.
And so you would think, like, I'm literally plotting to murder her. Yeah. And yet there is still this part of me that's, I understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at you for that, like for the act in of itself. I'm happy that at some point you're really just genuinely trying to protect me. You think you're doing something to protect me. Like all of these things, and yet they were both genuine. Yeah. You know, that's what I was doing. I was plotting murder, and yet at the same time, throughout that whole period, if he had ever called her a bipolar bitch after that moment, I would have snapped at him just the same.
Right.
And so at around 10 o'clock, I shut off my video game and I went to go upstairs to go to bed. Yeah. And I noticed that her TV was still on, which was weird because she only left it on when she was drunk. She was really good. She had a thing about electricity, turning it off. Yeah. Or she couldn't sleep with it on. I don't know. Okay. And So I went into the room and I saw the glass on her nightstand, and it had that like amber colored liquid in it, like either white wine. I was so used to her drinking white wine. And I went over and I smelled it, and I knew it was alcohol. And I just got so angry. And up until that point, that the whole plotting and everything else, it wasn't, you know, I've had a lot of people fight me on it, but it wasn't out of hatred. It was out of insane desperation and this terror of having to be alone, of not having that God or drug anymore, of having to live without that. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people listening to the cast that know exactly how that feels. That terror, if somebody ever told you, you will never be able to do fentanyl or heroin again. I'm taking it away from you.
Yeah.
And
Causes a reaction.
yeah, especially when you're not ready to give it up.
Yeah, I could tell you that.
And you still think it's doing good things for you in your life.
Yeah.
You know? You haven't hit the bad part of that relationship yet.
I'm pretty sure you've seen my mugshots.
Yeah.
That's the reaction.
Yeah. And I mean, it didn't help that he was my drug dealer, so it's everything wrapped into one.
Right. Right.
And so it was that overwhelming, sense-shattering terror and desperation. That complete fight, flight, I have to do this to survive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that moment when I picked up that glass and I realized she was drunk again that I got angry.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was, now I'm enraged. Now I'm angry. Now I want to, I wouldn't even say that I wanted to hurt her, but it became I can't stand another second in this house with you.
Yeah.
I want this to happen now. I never want to see your face again.
Right.
And so I called him, and we were supposed to have killed her on Friday night. It was Thursday night. And I called him, and I started ranting and venting about her being drunk again. And then I said, you know, we should do it that night instead of waiting till the next night, because we wouldn't know if she was going to be drunk the next night.
Right.
And his response was, you know, well, you know, she wakes up sometimes when she's drunk, like just randomly. It's like, how are you to make sure that she stays asleep? And I said, you know, oh, well, you know, I'll crush up something and I'll put it in her drink. And he's like, well, what are you going to use? And I'm like, oh, well, she, you know, one of her meds or whatever.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, you know, I'll come by after I'm done with work.
Yeah.
So I hung up the phone. I went downstairs. I tried to find, you know, her psych meds, her Vicodin, you know, whatever. Couldn't find anything. All of the all of the bottles were empty.
Okay.
And I even tried looking in her car, nothing. So again, this whole formula thing is, eventually I just settled on a vitamin. I cut it in half, I crushed it up, and I walked back upstairs and I put it in her drink.
Okay.
Because it was the closest thing I could get. I was so committed to this fantasy that if I could just do something as close as possible, and I never admit that I didn't do it the way that we had originally intended it, then it's still according to this formula.
This formula.
And it will make what I want to happen, which is we're going to die and we're going to end up in eternity together.
Yes.
You know? And so he, you know, came over after he was done with work. We sat outside for about half an hour. Eventually he said, you know, if we're going to do this, then we better go inside. So we went inside. You know, he started following me up the stairs. I had a paring knife.
Yeah.
And he had a chef's knife from work.
Okay.
And he stopped on the landing, and you know, he asked me, you know, did you drug her? And I'm sorry, he was in front of me actually.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, yeah, I did. You know, because again, don't break the spell. Don't say what really happened.
Right.
And so he went up the second set of stairs and he went into her room, and I was supposed to follow him behind him because the whole plan was for us to do it together.
Yeah.
And I got to the doorway, and there's a nightlight out in the hallway, and I could see my shadow, and my brain just shut off.
Mm.
It's like it was filled with white noise. There wasn't, horribly ashamed to say it, but it's true. There was no voice in the back of my head telling me this is a horrible idea. What are you doing? You don't want to hurt her. Nothing. It was just blank. It was like a white wall in my head. I couldn't think around it, and I couldn't think through it. There was no thinking. I don't remember thinking. I just remember going blank, like someone shut me off.
Yeah.
I just couldn't go past the door. And I sat down with my back against her door because it was a double door. And I just sat there with my knees up against my chest. And I just kind of blanked out, and then I kind of came back a bit, and I realized it was quiet where I was sitting, and then what I was doing, and I was like, oh, I was supposed to be doing this. And so I peeked around the door, and I saw Steven, and he had the knife in his hand, and he was practicing.
Okay.
Like over her.
Yeah.
And again, that whole like white wall, but it was like hard this time. Like it was something that was choking me.
Yeah.
And I went back up against the door, and I just remember like just staring at the wall, and then I started hearing noises.
Okay.
Like shuffling, and then my mom waking up and realizing who it was, saying his name. And then she said, I won't. And he yelled back at her, you won't what? And then she said my name twice. And then I covered my ears because I couldn't listen anymore. And I started humming to drown out the noise. Because even while I was doing what I was doing, all I could think about was, I can't do this. I can't hear this. And her pain was painful to me, but I didn't want to feel it. So the next thing I know, he's, I feel him walk by me. And I stood up, and I went and I got my bag from my room, and he held up a blanket so I could go into her room and shut the windows and turn off the lights and shut the curtains so I couldn't see her. And then we left the house, and we went to his house, burned our clothing, showered. Woke up the next morning, went to the Home Depot for rat poison. We went to grocery store for some food, and then another store for some hair dye. Because, just taking as much measures so that way it takes as long as possible for them to find us.
Yeah.
Make sure that we have time to kill ourselves.
You just wanted to not be detected.
Yeah.
So you can go to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. We ended up at God's house.
No.
Matt.
The second God.
The second God. And dyed our hair there, and
Yeah.
we hung out with him for most of the day trying to score drugs.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
why wouldn't we go? Why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Might as well go out with a bang.
Right. And that night before we left, I thought, we should tell God what we did.
Yeah.
And we did. And after that, we when we went to go drop him off at his house, it was the first time I ever did like cocaine by itself. I'd done, plenty of ecstasy with cocaine as a base, but it's the first time I'd ever done it straight.
Yeah.
And so I did, I think, like 2 lines, smoked a bowl of weed, popped a pill. Like, I was just gone.
Right. Yeah. Just give me whatever you got.
Yep, pretty much. I was like, I want to be going. Let's be gone. And then I was pretty consistently high over the next 3 days. I was just...
Right. You don't want to feel nothing.
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah.
And then Monday morning, right before we took the rat poison, took the rest of the drugs. Monday morning at around, I don't know, later in the morning, I don't know what time it was, woke up not dead.
Oh, man. What a bummer.
I started freaking out. I demanded, really, Boston to give me some of the razors I knew that he kept on him.
I see.
Carved up in the inside of my arm.
Yeah, really.
But they were so dull they didn't. They made like thin little lines, and I was just like, flipping out. And
right.
At that point, it was just this crashing realization of it didn't work.
Yeah.
The formula didn't work. It's pointless.
Right.
So I stopped. It's pointless. There's no point. I could kill myself now, and it's not going to change anything. I won't be with him for eternity because the it didn't work.
The plan didn't go.
And from that point, I was just really numb.
Yeah.
And it was just this, okay, well, what are we going to do next?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Right.
And it was like, well, we can't go north because that's where we came from, and we can't go east because that's where they think we are is in Massachusetts. So I guess the only way to go is south. So we just started walking south because his car had gotten towed. So we just started, so we just started walking south, and then the cops picked us up in San Bruno.
Why did they pick you up? Did they just saw you guys walking?
Somebody reported us, I think, walking through it had been a week since the murder at that point. And so obviously they had news bulletins across the country looking for us. And so they had somebody had seen us walking down one of their streets and reported us. So they were canvassing the area knowing that we were there.
Yeah.
So they found us and got arrested and got transferred back up to El Dorado Hills Juvenile Hall. Got put into adult court the day before my 15th birthday.
Oh, Jesus.
Got sentenced when I was 16. Did, a year and some change in YA, and then went to prison. And I was in prison until last year.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. What a trip. Yeah. So you did how many years in prison from?
Like 14 years, 9 months.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, 13 years, 9 months. It's like 3 months shy of 14 years.
Jesus Christ. We're already like 2 hours in on this thing. But you are the king of taking time on my podcast. But I just wanted to cover up just a little bit of because I know you've went through a lot of, obviously your case became a big public, what would be the right word for it? Like media fucking frenzy.
Yeah, that's pretty big. Every major, true crime, quote unquote true
Yeah, true
show.
crime. Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
for sure. They
Yeah.
don't build up nothing.
No,
They don't
it's
have their
complete
own little
bullshit.
objections. They're all, yeah, for sure.
I'm like, it's so funny when like some of the episodes would come on like of other people. I never watched it, but other people would say, yeah, you know, this is what was on the show. And I knew the person.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not what happened. Where did you guys even get that from? Or they would say it in a way that made it.
If it's on here, it has to be true.
Yeah, they would say it in a way that made one fact sound completely different than if you just said it straight.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. Those shows are just.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they want ratings.
Well, I mean, I have my own like vendetta against them, I guess, and it's not because they, you know, covered me. I mean, what I did was horrific. You know, there's no getting away from that. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And but the fact that she's still my mom, and no matter what I did, they made her brutal murder into entertainment for millions of people, and I think that's disgusting.
It is.
You know, what I did was disgusting, and making entertainment out of it is
shouldn't be
disgusting.
a fucking little thing that you can just click on and
Yeah.
and eat popcorn too. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I don't, you know, if that makes the families of the victims feel better, or gives them closure, feels like they get to, you know, speak their piece, then that's for them. But I just can't. I don't understand the people that do the shows, because they twist a lot of the facts completely askew too. So it's not even like they're telling it straight.
Right.
You know, if it were just like journalism, it would be different, but it's not. So
No, yeah.
It's really hard concept for me to swallow.
I totally understand. And just going through that when you're a fucking 15-year-old girl, that, you know, you have no identity.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's so, it must have been such a fucking challenge and just adversity to overcome.
It was. However, I can say that I don't know, at that point in my life, I don't know what else would have gotten through to me.
Yeah.
Other than, you know, being incarcerated for a good stretch of time.
Yeah.
That's not to say that that's going to work for everyone. My circumstances, whatever the difference in it was, you know, I was not the normal case. Most kids who go to prison when they're 18 years old with a life sentence end up fucking off the rest of their life. You know, they don't get their head together until they're in their 40s, and they've gone to board 3 times. You know, it just doesn't happen. I was really lucky that I had quite a few, like a whole band of lifers who, you know, protected me as much as they could and made sure that I was doing things that would get my head on straight. Even when it wasn't on straight yet, they're like, just do this. Right. Eventually, one day, you'll get it. It's kind of like going to a meeting, even when you're still using. You know, eventually, you'll see why there's a point to this shit. Right. You know? Right. And I did. And so it ended up working out for me. And I can honestly say that prison is, it sounds really sad when other people hear it, but it's true for me. Prison was the best home that I had in my life before I got out. Yeah. And it was the happiest I'd ever been in my life before I got out. And it was the place where I found the most loving, trusting relationships with the best people before, you know, and even to this day. Yeah. So it was not an inherently negative experience for me. It's also probably because I grew up in the system. So I grew up institutionalized. So a lot of the rules and strictures and things like that, they didn't really have an effect on me. Because I'm like, I grew up with this. This is normal. You know, having COs behave this way towards me, being a, you know, being property of the state, and like having my life directed for me, and being treated like, you know, scum of the earth. That's pretty normal, and I assume that everyone in society is going to treat me like that too because of what I did. Like, I get it, you know. So as much as that really harms other people's mental health, but for me it was normal, so it didn't really bother me. um, you know, but
being an inmate wasn't a
Yeah.
big deal to you.
no, because I grew up as an inmate.
Yeah.
You know, is getting out and dealing with people out here. You know, to this day, I'm still shocked when somebody hears my story and they don't, you know, hate me or they're not disgusted by me or
Really?
they still won't talk to me like I'm a human being. Is
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't hold it against them if they did. You know, I get it.
Yeah.
I do, and that's not like that's not a down on myself. I believe I am human. I believe I am worthy of respect, you know,
Mhm.
and love. However, I would never criticize somebody for thinking that I didn't deserve those things
Yeah.
because of what I've done, you know.
Yeah.
And I understand the fear it invokes. So, you know, I'm compassionate to that and I try to be as understanding as possible.
Absolutely. And again, I just wanted to clarify, man, like, because I've said this to you before, like, you know, one of my close friends is also a lifer. He's a male, so they, you know, there's the politics and shit behind that prison
Yeah.
system, so it's a little more harder
Yeah.
to reform
Oh, yeah.
and better yourself, but still, even without the politics involved, you know, doing that much time and being you know, in a position of despair, what would a lot of people interpret it as.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still amazed that you came out and that you have a positive outlook in your life, and you're not afraid of your past. You know what I mean? You honestly fucking faced it head on, and it's an admirable trait about you that I really respect. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
You know, and I know your name, your original name is something that, you know, is gonna whatever forever be
Yeah.
in the
That's okay.
in the, you know, in the whatever in, out there. It's
Mhm.
out there, you know, and your information can be pulled up in a click of a button on a cell
Mhm.
phone. But, you know, I just, despite all that, because that could fuck with people alone.
It has, actually. It's fucked with me a lot. I had someone just recently at my job, he got angry because he assaulted me
What?
in my office. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't serious. He didn't do any damage.
Okay.
But according to the legal definition of assault, he assaulted me with,
Okay.
with a door.
Oh God.
And then my boss
douchebag.
decided to give him a violation for it.
Yeah.
And he got so angry over it and said that we were all lying. And then his defense at his hearing was to pull up everything on my crime
Oh,
and like
Jesus
a
Christ.
interview I did when I was 16, when I was honest, and I said that at the time when I was 16, I still had a really hard time telling the truth.
Yes.
It was like going through DTs every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
not even
fuck.
kidding, like
Okay.
sweating bullets, like even
God
over
damn.
shit that didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was so hard, but I still did it.
Yeah.
So he brought that up, and then he took that one sentence out of context and then blew it up on the page, and it's
Oh
like,
my
she's a
God.
liar. She's always had trouble telling the truth. What makes you
my
think she's telling the
God.
truth now?
Oh
And
my
I'm like, I'm not even the one they're taking the report from, dude. It was my boss who watched you do everything that you did.
Wow. Yeah. He's just trying to victim blame here.
Yeah, and then
Great.
and then at the end of it, he threatened to call my PO if they didn't like rescind the violation. Yeah, and I wasn't working there anymore, so
Oh my
they
fucking
didn't. They
Yeah.
violated him, and
Yeah.
then they ended up calling me to hire me back for part-time work. And I
Wow,
said
that's
yes,
awesome.
because I didn't know any of that was happening. And I was
Right,
like,
right,
yeah,
right.
sure, you know, like financial aid does not pay bills, and I'm a full-time
No.
student.
No.
So,
No, it
you
doesn't.
know,
No, it doesn't.
sure, I'll go back to work.
Uh-huh.
And I go back, and he sees me walk back onto the property.
Mhm.
Literally 2 days later, I got a call from my PO saying, who is this man? Why is he calling me? And I was like, oh my God. So I explained to my PO what happened, and I was like, here, you can talk to my boss. Don't take my word for it. And he's
Right.
like, yeah, nope, I don't need to do that. I believe you.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, like, really? And he was like, yeah, he kind of stepped on his own feet. He told me what happened.
Oh, God, that's so funny.
Obviously, if he's getting a violation for it and your manager is willing to
hire you back.
yeah, like, obviously,
God damn.
that's, I believe you.
What a
So,
fucking piece of shit, dude. I'm sorry.
but, so yeah, it's very possible. Like, people can and already have tried to seriously fuck with my life over it.
Yeah.
But, and like I said, though, this guy, obviously, like, I kind of feel, I feel sorry for him. I feel like, and he's retired, and he's obviously built up his life around feeling like he has some semblance of control. And I get it, because I used to be the control freak, right? Look at everything I used to do to try to have control.
Right.
And I can't judge him for that, but his whole identity and feeling like he's okay is bound up in having some kind of control over where he lives, which is being able to be on committees and do all this stuff, which now he can't do because of that violation.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even the violation of towards me that got him kicked off, actually. But
oh, that's hilarious. He has other behavior that got him.
He harassed another employee before me.
Wow, what a cool guy.
But he blames it on me, so I was like, okay,
it's her fault.
But I get it, that's
everything go wrong with my life. It's her fault.
Yeah. And, and that's for him, that's where his identity is. And that's where his feeling okay comes from, is feeling like he has control, and that got taken away from him, and he needed somebody to blame and someone to be mad at. And I was the prime target. And so while, yes, I was angry, I also don't I don't hold resentments against him, because after everything I've done in my life, there's no judgment, like, I'm sorry that you have to go through all of that to feel okay in your life. I truly am. And I hope one day that that's not the case. Right. That's as much as I can, that's as far as I can go with it. Yeah. Like my wonderful sponsor, who hopefully you'll have on your show soon.
Soon, hopefully.
Yeah, says
so busy,
would you get mad at somebody for having cancer?
Oh yeah, I think I've heard that once or twice.
Yeah,
or 1,000 times.
So if someone's sick, would you get mad at them for having cancer?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true for addicts. Can we get mad at someone for acting out in their addiction when they're addicted? It's their disease.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be mad at someone for having, or you can, but it's kind of pointless to be mad at someone for having a disease.
Right.
And I think the same thing is true for like character defects that people
That's
hold
what I was
on
about to say. Yeah, even if it's defects, character or behavior.
Yeah. So when we have that, when you're a control freak or you're a manipulator or whatever like that, that's their disease. And I can be angry I can be angry, and I feel angry over what this is doing to my life, the effect that it's having on my life, but I'm not going to resent you or, hold on to resentments against you for you acting out in your sickness. Yeah. All I can do is, hope and pray that one day that isn't the case for you. Yeah. I hope that you find security and happiness and peace in something that doesn't come from other people or having control over things outside of yourself, because you're always going to be discontent if that's the case.
That's true.
And that's what I had to figure out the very, very hard way.
Yeah, right.
Right. As long as
putting it to practice is kind of a bitch sometimes.
Yeah, and I really had to work on myself a lot to get to the point where I realized that if I put my happiness or my ability to feel joy or peace or serenity on anything else outside of myself, it's on shaky ground. Yeah. Because I have no control over things that are outside of myself. Yeah. If I put my future happiness on having a boyfriend, having a car, having a job, having a specific type of living environment, having a specific job, getting a specific grade in school. If I put it on those things, something can always happen that's completely out of my control that trashes those things. And then I'm all fucked up inside. Yeah. But if I put my ability to have serenity and to have joy and to have peace and to feel fulfilled in my life on things that I do, and having a relationship with my higher power and working my steps and, choosing my mind frame, then I will always have it, no matter what's happening around me. And that is a key lesson, I think, that more than anything else, prison taught me. And it's something that I cherish, and I wouldn't want to be outside of prison without it. So I'm really glad that I learned it.
That's right. Let me close the door on your higher power, your former higher power. What's going on with him?
He got LWAP, so he's life without the possibility of parole.
I see.
However, he was 19 when he committed his crime, and I know that there are laws in California that they're trying to get rid of LWAP for youth offenders, so anyone under the age of, right now I think it keeps going up of 23 and under. I don't really know what's going on with him. I know that the last time we had contact, we had written 2 letters back and forth about 5 years after I was incarcerated.
I see.
And the last letter that he wrote to me blamed me for everything.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it was,
naturally.
he would not be sitting in prison if it weren't for me. And me manipulating him. And I'm like...
I think he made some bad choices. I think the man made that bad.
I'm like, granted, I absolutely manipulated you. However...
God or not, the man made some bad choices.
Yeah. I was like, at some point,
earned his seat in prison for sure.
It's like, so what you're saying is that a 14-year-old was able to fuck with your head well enough to make you commit murder? Like, don't you think that in and of itself was a serious problem?
Yeah.
But,
not to mention like all the fucking sexual predator shit this motherfucker was doing beforehand.
Yeah.
So, okay.
As far as I know, he's still in prison. I don't know whether or not he's doing good. But I hope that if he ever does, I don't believe in life incarceration. I think that a board for, determining fitness to be out in society and true rehabilitation, I think that's important. There's a lot of people that would disagree with me.
Yeah.
But I think it is important. I think that, most lifers actually have that viewpoint, or most of the ones that I know.
I honestly 100% agree with you. See, I've known your story for a while, almost from the gate. You told me your name, you told me everything, and like I 100% do believe like we do need more rehabilitation in our system. It's so fucking broken. Yep. And like I get maybe certain circumstances if somebody really is a career criminal, they've been given chance after chance, and it's like, okay, well, then obviously they want to just live in prison for the rest of their lives. But
I don't think that's the case. I think that they don't know anything different. Yeah. Like, I love it when people say, it's like, well, the laws are there for a reason. How could they not know any different? No, it's not about that. It's they are doing what they know internally. Yeah. Like the things that make sense in their heart and in their head, because that's how they've survived their entire life. And you're expecting them to turn their back on that to try this whole new way of life that's completely foreign to them, that they don't know how to navigate. They don't know any of those societal rules. They have no idea how to communicate in that kind of life. And you're expecting them to just adopt it and go for it when none of your incarceration systems teach them how to do that in the first place.
They don't.
That's insane.
They really
to them, that is completely insane. They're gonna die.
It's like, well, all right, just screw it off, and not our problem because we just turn a blind eye right here.
So
it's a shame. I hope there is more reform. And hopefully people like you can show people that too. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. And I hope that one day he does get it. I mean, whether or not he gets out, I hope that one day he gets that too. Right.
Absolutely. And, Jesus, what else did I want to cover? I guess, I really do appreciate, your support as a friend and, supporting my brand, straight out of prison, which is kind of cool.
100%. Fuck fentanyl, man.
Yeah. I think you and Katie are really fucking cool. And, like I said, I like to see the the success stories. You know what I mean? Because I've so many times, my friends in and out of the system, they just go right back all the time, and they'll go right back to doing what put them in prison, and then they'll go right back, and then they just die.
Yeah. So
seeing you two fucking get out, it really does give me a little more hope and more like wow, okay, this is awesome, we really do fucking recover.
Yeah, we do. And that's always my thing. Whenever I've like led a meeting, I don't talk about like the nitty-gritty details of my crime.
Right.
I actually have never talked about who specifically my victim is.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's not for not wanting to be transparent. It's just because it's really hard to, in a 15-minute lead, to get to that. And then,
Well, it took like 2 hours to build up the crime itself. Yeah. So, no.
Yeah. And then get back to some kind of message.
Yeah. But hey. But let's not get high, guys.
Yeah. Well, but, and that's the thing, though, is that getting back to that place is if somebody hears my story and they talk to me and they know me and they feel that I'm, and I'm in recovery and I'm living that life and I have that program, right. I really hope that anybody else who's having doubts about whether or not they can recover can hear that and know that they can recover, Absolutely. That it's possible. I didn't do, like a gnarly stretch of drugs, but I definitely had my fair share of like horrible fucking transgressions. So if you think that you've done anything that's so horrible that someone can't look you in the eye and tell you, like a sponsor can't look you in the eye and tell you after your fourth step, okay, and I still love you. Right. I mean, mine did it with me. Yeah. So. Yeah.
There's one thing about your story, right? Maybe I can't relate to some of the bottoms you had, but I can definitely relate to your feelings. I fucking, I fucking love my fucking drug of choice, heroin, and I would have fucking done the worst fucking things imaginable if it meant to stay high. And that's why I gave a nice little fucking pose when I fucking got locked up. And I've been totally, and just like the thing for me too, it's not just like, okay, I'm off drugs. It's just the spiritual healing that I need in my life, man, because it's that endless void of, because I'm not feel like I belong anywhere. I feel like I just, I needed this thing or even this person to make me feel complete. That's one thing I get from your shares and from your story. I did want to clarify one thing before I wrap this bitch up.
What's up?
What's your clean date?
My clean date has actually changed. It's
really?
Yeah, it's June 21st of 2012.
Oh, nice.
I stopped doing.
I had to hit you with that one.
Thank you. I mean, originally, obviously, it was that Monday, so it was like June, I think 14th.
Yeah.
Of 2009, but obviously, as soon as I got into juvie, I started trying to manipulate the psych. To give me psych meds.
Oh.
Yeah.
People do that?
Yeah.
People do that? They try to manipulate their medication?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Oh my God. I can't believe it.
I ended up getting diagnosed with depression, anxiety by that psych anyhow, because they didn't have a diagnosis on file and they couldn't contact any, like my parents to ask for it.
Yeah.
So, but aside from that, I just wanted to not feel anymore. And then I continued to use my psych meds. I didn't abuse them, but I was using them with an addictive mindset. I I was still trying to run away from that void. I didn't want to feel. And it wasn't until, 2012 that I finally got serious, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
Wow.
I don't want to use these in this way anymore. I'm going to try to see if I can start actually facing my shit and see how that works. And so I asked my psych to start decreasing my meds so I can start learning how to cope with my anxiety and my depression and all my feelings and start really trying to feel my feelings because I felt like I owed that to my mom and my family and everyone else I hurt with my crime, like my whole community that was traumatized, my whole school, that I owed them to go as hard as I possibly could in my rehabilitation and in my recovery and face my shit because they had to face my shit every day.
Yeah.
You know? So who was I to run away from it? Yeah. And so that's when I decided I was going to start doing that. And then I ended up getting off my psych meds completely. I don't know the exact date that I got off of them, but I know that it was the day that I made that decision that I was going to stop using them. It was sometime in the summer of 2012. So I just went for, June 21st.
June 21st. Nice.
And that way it's still close to my crime date, but it's a little bit further. It's a couple weeks after.
Okay.
Just to give it the cushion. But
right.
but yeah. So and I felt like that was I wanted to be honest about that.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of people would go, oh well, that doesn't count.
Yeah, and that's. It just, for me, it's like whenever you use anything to try to alter your mind and run away from what's going on inside of you, whether it's a person or whether it's psych meds or drugs. And that's not to say that some people don't legitimately need psych meds.
Like, of course not.
Like I said, I have anxiety and I still have depression and I'm, I've been suicidal in the past. So if I were ever in another depressive stint, I would go back on medication, but it wouldn't be to numb myself out, it's the reasons why I was using that. Yeah, it was the intention behind it, which was I'm using this to run away.
Yeah.
That was the addiction. Yeah. And so for me, sobriety is about living a program and living a clean life, and not using anything to run away, not using anything addictively, no matter what that is.
Facing fear.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I just thought about this. I think you're my first guest that has more time than me. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fuck, man. I fucking love talking to Charlie. As you could tell, I can fucking talk to Charlie like fucking for hours. But before I close this, just real quick, where can you get your book, Charlie?
Oh, Barnes & Noble is available on Barnes & Noble and also like Amazon. Okay. So, and even if you don't like books or, I'm sorry about the price. That's literally the lowest my publisher would let me set it. I swear. So I'm sorry about that. Aww. But the Kindle version I think is way cheaper. I think it's like $9. So.
Oh, okay. Hey, if you're tight on money, go hit up the Kindle. Yeah. And the book's called Broken?
Yeah, it's called Broken. It's by C.M. Wolf.
C.M. Wolf.
Yep.
Charlie Wolf.
Yep.
That's a fucking nice name, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Charlie. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone.